Welcome to the Deep Dive. We dig into fascinating sources to give you insights fast and deep. Today, we're really getting into it with Dr. Robert Sapolsky, a name you probably know, neurobiologist, neurosurgeon at Stanford.
Yeah, his work is pretty incredible, isn't it? He has this
Yeah.
amazing way of, connecting primate behavior stuff he saw in the field for years with, well, us,
Yeah.
human psychology.
He really tries to show how much our biology, our primate past, still shapes us,
Totally. And if you've read his books, like Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers or Behave.
which are fantastic, by the way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Then, he can make really complex science super clear. And he's got a new book coming, Determined, The Science of Life Without Free Will.
Ooh, yeah, free will. We are definitely going to tackle that one today.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack the science of stress, how it controls us in ways you might not expect, and then hormones like testosterone and estrogen, what they really do.
Not just the myths.
Exactly. And finally, dig into this whole idea of free will. Does it actually exist?
Yeah.
We want to give you insights into, the science behind who we are and maybe how understanding it helps day to day.
Okay, let's start with stress. Because we usually think of it as like this big negative thing.
Right.
But Sapolsky says, hold on, short bursts. Those can actually be good for us. Really good, even beyond just, running from a lion.
That's such a key point. Think about short-term stress, like a deadline looming, or maybe you're about to give a presentation.
Yeah, that feeling.
That acute response, your body mobilizing everything, actually sharpens your focus, makes you think clearer. It's adaptive, highly adaptive.
It's our old wiring still working in the modern world. But then there's the flip side, the long-term stuff.
Oh, yeah. The chronic stress. That's the stuff that really gets you. Like constant money worries or a terrible boss you have to deal with day after day, year after year.
That's when the system starts breaking down.
Exactly. That relentless activation, it becomes harmful. Bad for pretty much every system in your body.
What I find really fascinating is Sapolsky's idea of the optimal stimulation curve. It's not about no stress.
No, not at all.
It's about finding the right amount. Too little, you're bored, you don't function well.
Right. Underwhelmed.
Too much, you're just fried,
Yeah.
overwhelmed. But that middle ground, that optimal level.
That's what we call stimulation. It's actually something we often, pay for. Think scary movies, roller coasters.
Yeah, good point. We actively seek it out sometimes.
Which brings up a really interesting question. Physiologically, how does the body tell the difference between, say, thrilling excitement and actual terror? Because, the racing heart, the fast breathing, it can feel pretty similar.
And that's where the amygdala comes in, isn't it?
Bingo. Sapolsky points right to it. If the amygdala gets fired up, it pushes our interpretation towards, this is bad, this is dangerous.
So it's like a switch or a gatekeeper.
Kind of a checkpoint, yeah. It marks that tipping point where excitement flips over into fear or stress.
It really highlights how much perception matters. You could feel that buzz before something big, and it's exciting.
Right. Anticipation.
But if that amygdala really kicks in hard, if your brain flags it as a threat,
Then boom. Same physical feelings, but now it's stressful, overwhelming maybe. Your brain's interpretation, with the amygdala playing a big role, sets the emotional tone.
that amygdala deciding between excitement and terror, it reminds me of another area Sapolsky tackles, where perception is everything. Testosterone.
Ah, yes. The big T.
There's this huge myth, right? Testosterone causes aggression. Men are more aggressive, therefore.
Therefore, P causes it. Yeah, it just seems logical, but Sapolsky just dismantles that idea.
So what's the real story?
It's much more subtle. Testosterone doesn't flip an aggression switch out of nowhere. What it does is lower the threshold for things that would already make you aggressive.
Okay, so it's like turning up the volume.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It amplifies aggression patterns that are already there, stuff you've learned socially. It makes systems that are already on turn on louder.
The monkey hierarchy example he uses is perfect for this.
Oh yeah, the number 3 monkey.
You give him extra testosterone, and he doesn't suddenly try to take on the alpha or the number 2.
Nope. He becomes, what was the phrase? A miserable terror to numbers 4 and 5, the ones below him.
It shows so clearly it's amplifying the existing social behavior, not creating new ambitions.
And neurologically, it's similar. Testosterone doesn't just make amygdala neurons start firing randomly about aggression. But if the amygdala is already getting signals about a potential threat or provocation,
Then testosterone jumps in.
right, it makes those neurons fire faster, more readily, keeps them going longer. It literally ups the volume on the aggression response that's already brewing.
So boosting existing signals, not creating them. That makes sense of the whole status thing too, right? Higher T often correlates with aggression, but maybe it's the aggression raising the T?
Very often, yes. It's more of a response than a cause. Engaging in aggressive acts or even sexual behavior can increase testosterone.
Didn't he mention sports?
Yeah. Just watching your favorite team in a big game can give you a T boost if they win. It's amazing. Your baseline level before something happens. Often not a great predictor.
And even in those castration studies.
Right, aggression and sexual behavior go way down, but not to zero. There's still behavior carried by learning, by the social context. It's not just a hormone.
That's crucial. And he also talks about the timing, how T works differently during development versus in adulthood.
Huge difference. Early on, in fetal development, small variations in testosterone exposure, the stuff linked, the finger length ratios, the 2D.4D thing,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
that can have real, subtle, long-lasting organizing effects on how the brain gets built, shaping adult behavior down the line.
But in adults,
In adults, it's more like an all or none signal for behaviors already in the playbook. It doesn't usually create brand new behaviors or change your fundamental personality if you just add more T.
and we should definitely say females have testosterone too.
Absolutely, from adrenals, ovaries. And the same basic rules apply. You need some for typical behavior, including aggression and libido, but it's not causing it in a simple way, and small individual differences don't usually make a huge impact.
So if we zoom out, Sapolsky's saying testosterone is basically an amplifier.
Pretty much. It makes you more of whatever you already are when it comes to those motivated behaviors, like sex drive or aggression.
Which leads to his challenge hypothesis.
Right. Your T goes up when your status is challenged. It boosts the behaviors you need to maintain that status.
But here's the cool part. For humans, status isn't just about punching someone.
Exactly. We can get status in countless ways, which leads to that totally amazing finding, the generosity experiment.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
Okay, get this. You give people testosterone,
Yeah.
but you put them in a situation where status comes from being trustworthy and generous. What happens?
And they get more generous.
They get more generous. It boosts the pro-social behavior because that's how you win status in that specific game. He paints this picture of like Buddhist monks having random acts of kindness competitions.
Wow, that completely flips the script.
It really does. The problem isn't the testosterone molecule itself. It's what society rewards. If we reward aggression with status, T will amplify aggression. If we reward cooperation,
Then T might amplify cooperation. That's huge.
it is. And there's the subtler effects too. T boosts self-confidence, which can be good,
Or bad.
or lead to overconfidence, yeah. Less cooperation, maybe making you cocky, impulsive,
Yeah.
leading to miscalculations. Sapolsky even throws out the idea that this might have played a role in things like, starting World War I.
That's a heavy thought. And then there's the link with dopamine.
Ah, yeah, they're tightly connected. And dopamine isn't just pleasure. It's more about anticipating reward, the motivation, the drive to go get the reward.
The get up and go.
Exactly that. Testosterone ramps up that energy, alertness, motivation.
Yeah.
Rats will even press a lever to get testosterone because it helps optimize that dopamine kick. It fuels the drive.
But where that drive takes you.
Depends entirely on you. Your learning, your values, your culture. It could fuel charity work or it could fuel, ethnic cleansing. The hormone provides the gas, not the steering wheel.
Okay, so if T is the misunderstood amplifier, what about estrogen? Less controversial, maybe?
Generally, yeah. But still really powerful and crucially important in male brains too.
Right. Men need it for thinking. Libido.
Yep. And overall, estrogen has a lot of protective effects. It's generally good for cognition, helps grow new neurons in the hippocampus.
That's the memory center, right?
It boosts glucose and oxygen to the brain, and it helps to protect against things like dementia and heart disease by reducing inflammation and damage in blood vessels. Kind of the opposite of some T effects there.
But it's not all just like nurturing vibes.
Definitely not. After birth, estrogen is a key player in maternal aggression. So it's powerful and complex, not just warm and fuzzy.
Which brings us to that tricky area, post-menopause and hormone replacement.
Oh boy. Yeah, the estrogen minefield, as Sapolsky puts it. There was that huge NIH study back in the 90s.
But when they stopped early.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Because it looked like giving estrogen replacement after menopause actually increased the risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, which was shocking.
Totally counterintuitive, especially given earlier animal studies.
Exactly. And the key turned out to be timing. The protective effects seen in monkeys happened when estrogen levels were kept stable through the transition into the postmenopausal period.
Not stopped and then restarted later.
Right. That lag time seems to change how the body responds. It messes with the estrogen receptors, basically rewires the system so the hormone has negative effects instead of positive ones.
Wow, so it's not just about adding the hormone back.
Not even close. Plus, estrogen isn't just one thing. There's estrone, estradiol, estriol, and it all interacts with progesterone levels too. It's super complex.
Really underscores the need to talk to a doctor. This is not DIY stuff.
Absolutely not. Timing, individual physiology. It's all incredibly nuanced.
And that theme of interpretation, how our mind shapes things, brings us back nicely to stress management. Sapolsky's rat study, the running wheels.
Oh yeah, the voluntary versus forced running, classic.
Same amount of running, totally different outcomes.
Totally. Rat 1 chooses to run, gets all the benefits, healthier heart, brain, less stress. Rat 2 is forced on the wheel, same exercise, but gets all the downsides of chronic stress.
Because of the interpretation in its head.
Precisely. The perception of control, or lack thereof. You can bet the amygdala in that forced rat was going wild compared to the voluntary runner. It's a powerful illustration.
It really is. It's not just what happens, but how we frame it. Sapolsky lists these key ingredients for psychological stress.
Yeah, the building blocks, like having a sense of control.
Even if it's fake, like a dummy button.
Right. Predictability, knowing when the stressor is coming, having outlets for frustration, social support, and seeing the good news in things.
But he warns against making it too simple, right?
Oh, yeah. He says it's much, much more subtle.
Yeah.
Like, predictability only helps in a sweet spot. A warning too soon or too late doesn't work, might even make it worse.
And the control thing.
That's a huge caveat. A sense of control is great for mild or moderate stress. But for major, awful stuff, homelessness, terminal cancer, being a refugee.
Trying to feel in control could actually be harmful.
Yeah, it can lead to self-blame, make the suffering worse. You can't just preach mind over matter to someone in truly horrific circumstances. It's just cruel.
And the outlets need to be constructive, not just like yelling at someone else.
Right. Displacement aggression might reduce your stress briefly, but it just spreads misery. And social support has to be real, reciprocal, not just draining sympathy from others.
So what about actual stress management techniques? Meditation, mindfulness, exercise, gratitude?
Sapolsky says, look, on average, these things work. They lower heart rate, cholesterol, etc. There's good data. But the key is personalization. It has to work for you. If trying to meditate makes you want to scream, that's not your technique. Find something else.
Then you have to actually do it.
Consistently. Daily or every other day, 20, 30 minutes. You can't just bank it for the weekend when you're already stressed out.
He also says something interesting about just deciding to do it.
Yeah. That the act of deciding your well-being matters enough to carve out that time. That's like 80% of the way there. It shifts your mindset.
Like making the therapy appointment helps even before you go.
Exactly like that. So be skeptical of anyone claiming their method is the one true, scientifically proven way for everyone.
It's amazing how much our thoughts, our cortex, can influence our basic body system.
Totally. Just thinking about something scary can trigger a full-on stress response. Shows the power of perception.
And people vary hugely in what feels like good stress versus bad stress.
Enormously. For one person, optimal stimulation is quiet birdwatching. For another, it's being a mercenary. It leads to this idea of cognitive flexibility.
And multiple hierarchies. Our prefrontal cortex is amazing at context, right?
It's a master of it. Social context, moral relativism, situational ethics. Our perception really does shape reality, like the marathon runner example.
The winner feeling bad because they missed their record, while number 73 feels amazing just for finishing.
Exactly. Testosterone might drop in the winner, rise in the finisher. It's all interpretation based on their context and expectations.
We have this incredible ability to switch between different ways of seeing things.
An enormous amount of flexibility, he calls it. We toggle between our cortex and those older brain systems, and we live in multiple hierarchies at once.
Yeah, maybe you're low on the totem pole at work, but you're the star captain of your softball team.
Right. And you use your cortex to shift focus, decide which hierarchy matters now, what gives you status or satisfaction in this moment.
We're also really good at making excuses for ourselves.
Oh, brilliant at it. Situational excuses for our own bad behavior. I was tired, I was stressed, but for others, it's constitutional. They're just a bad person.
Which brings us to social media, using our old biology in these brand new abstract ways.
Yeah, our ancestors dealt with maybe a few dozen, maybe 100 people in pretty direct ways. Now, social media throws thousands, millions of contexts at us.
Their social comparisons go global.
Totally. Feeling bad because you compare yourself to some influencer you've ever met, or seeing pictures of a party in another country you weren't invited to. Our sense of where we rank is just like exploded outwards, wicked out into infinity is how he put it, I think.
It's interesting that Sapolsky himself avoids it all.
Yeah, says his best thinking happens studying baboons in Africa, totally offline. But he did mention seeing maybe a glimmer of hope.
With younger generations.
Maybe starting to consciously limit context, putting phones away sometimes to actually focus on the people right there with them.
Maybe. Okay, let's shift to the really big one. Free will. Or the lack of it.
Right. Sapolsky's personal stance. He's pretty upfront that he's out in left field on this, that most neuroscientists and philosophers disagree.
But he believes we have. What? Not a shred of it.
That's his position. He argues everything we do, every choice, is just the end result of a long chain of dominoes falling before it.
Dominoes being everything.
Everything. What you smelled a second ago, your hormone levels this morning, brain changes from the last few months, what happened to you in the womb, your genes, your culture, how your parents raised you.
It all adds up and there's no room left over.
That's the idea. No space for some you that makes decisions independent of all that biology and history. No ghost in the machine.
So the obvious question then is, if we know about all these influences, does that give us some freedom? Can we use the knowledge to, like, step outside the domino chain?
That's the hope, right? But Sapolsky's answer is no, not in the sense of creating free will out of thin air.
There's a but, right?
Yes. I mean, he says this knowledge can create something really positive. The belief that change is possible. It fights fatalism. We can't just will ourselves to be different.
But we can be changed by things.
Exactly. We can be changed by circumstances, by new information, by experiences. Even a sea slug learns its neurobiology changes based on its environment. That basic process is conserved in us.
So learning that change is possible actually makes change more possible.
It seems so. It primes your brain to notice optimistic stuff, makes you more resilient. Reading about inspirational people like Mandela or MLK can literally, subtly change your neurochemistry. You become a different machine.
So trying to be a better person, striving, that's still worthwhile.
Absolutely, because the striving itself, the knowledge of knowledge, is one of those inputs that changes the machine. Learning about how your prenatal environment might have shaped you changes your brain right now.
That makes sense. And this is all in his new book, Determined.
Yeah. Part 1 is basically laying out the scientific case against free will, challenging the standard argument.
And Part 2.
That's the really hard part. Okay, if there's no free will, how the heck do we live? What happens to blame, praise, reward, anger, entitlement when the usual justifications disappear?
Does he have an answer?
He points to history. We used to blame witches for storms or mothers for causing schizophrenia. We gradually subtracted that idea of agency and blame.
And society didn't collapse?
Nope. Arguably, it became more humane. He suggests it's possible to do the same with our current notions of blame and punishment, even though it's incredibly difficult. Hard as hell, I think he says.
Wow. Okay. So, wrapping this up, we've gone from stress not always being bad to hormones like testosterone being amplifiers, not simple causes.
Right, understanding that nuance and the complexity of estrogen too, especially around timing.
And then landing on this massive idea about free will, challenging our basic assumptions about choice and responsibility.
And the key takeaway, maybe, is that understanding all this biological wiring, this knowledge of knowledge, isn't just interesting trivia, it's actually a tool.
A tool that can change us.
Yeah. Change how we see ourselves, make us more open to the possibility of positive change, even if it happens to us through circumstance and learning, rather than pure willpower.
So, the final thought for you, listening. If our choices, our actions, are really the product of all this intricate biology meeting the environment, how does that change how you see yourself, your potential?
And maybe just as importantly, how does it change how you see other people, their struggles, their successes? Could it lead to maybe a different kind of compassion, a different sense of responsibility even, something to think about?